Which state gives you more bang for your buck, California or Texas? I ask economist Dr. Art Laffer. There's a lot of tax reform going on the state level. You're very highly involved in that.
Yes.
What's going on in terms of state tax reform?
Well, you see two groups of states, and they're battling really strongly. You get places like Massachusetts, like Connecticut, like Vermont, like Maryland with O'Malley there and Duval Patrick there, and you know all of these states. You get Illinois with Quinn, you get Mark Dayton in Minnesota, you get Jerry Brown, all trying to tax their states into prosperity, which is, to my way of thinking, silly. Then you get all the movers the other way: Rick Perry, Rick Scott, Scott Walker. You get Brownback. What a wonderful guy! Mary Fallon, Bobby Jindal. I mean, you know, Perry is amazing. I mean, you get all of these states going the opposite direction. This is the battleground for politics. Politics flows up, not down.
Sure.
And the thing that's going to be so cool is the sort of the point, the battleground point, if you will, the sort of battleground central is between California and Texas. And that's what I just finished a recent paper on, is Texas versus California. I've done a number of them over the years, but this time I've taken it all the way to public services. Let me, if I can, try to just illustrate it to you. The way I look at it and the way I've calculated, California's tax rates are about 65% higher than our Texas's tax rates. That's just tax rates. If you take everything and put them all together, you know, Texas is very low rate, California's a very high rate.
Sure.
But if you get to revenues, because of all the leakages, because of higher unemployment in California, lower participation rates, people fleeing, shifting their income, there's a huge, what I call a parasitic leakage. That revenues are about 25% higher in California than they are in Texas.
Interesting.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Then you go from revenues to spending, because there are all sorts of leakage there on regulations, restrictions, requirements, permitting, and all this other unionization, you know, prevailing wage, all these other regulations that exist in California that don't exist in Texas. That you go there's another parasitic leakage, that while you have revenues 25% higher in California than Texas, spending is about the same. Ow, there's a big, then you get the next set of leakages between spending, now this is as a share of GDP, all right? Then you get to the provision of public services. Because of the much higher wages, because of the unionization and all of that in California, and because of all these restrictions and provisions and all of that stuff, Texas provides better public services across the board than does California. In fact, I would say Texas...
How's that measured?
Well, I measure it by the highways, by the Department of Transportation. I measure it by the Department of Education, measuring 4th grade and 8th grade. California has the 4th lowest scores in the nation. Texas is the 29th highest in the nation. You look at the mega states is what I do there. I look at the number of policemen per 10,000 population, the number of firemen per 10,000 population, the number
and there's more firemen and more policemen.
Oh yeah, more prison guards, everything, except welfare workers. California has a huge advantage in welfare workers, and they pay them a lot more. I mean, just one of the fun things is a legislator in California earns $95,000 a year, down from $113,000. The legislator in Texas earns $7,500 a year, and the provision of public services are much better. Students are performing better in Texas than they do in California. You know, all of these measures. Roads are better in Texas than they are in California. I mean, Texas is way high ranked. California is dead last in roads. And I could go on and on.
And you're seeing this in a variety of states where...
Yes, I've done it for all the states.
Okay.
Every single one. I've got all the provision of services.
And this is through your Laffer Center at the Pacific
This is through the
Race.
Laffer Center at PRI. We're doing that, and it's just amazing. I mean, I go through all these measures. I've always looked at tax rates and growth, but now I've taken it all the way through all the parasitic leakages to the provision of public services. You do not get better public services with higher tax rates, period. Did I make that clear enough? You do not get better public services with more unionized public workers. You just plain don't. You don't get better public services with higher regulations, restrictions, and requirements. You just don't. Now, maybe somewhere in the range you would, but not in the range we're operating at in the United States today with the states we're looking at.
Now, when you listed off all of the governors who are doing, you know, what you consider very good and sensible reforms,
sure,
and all the governors who are, as you said, taxing,
yep,
trying to tax their way to prosperity,
yes,
it sounds like there's a division across partisan
totally
lines. Even though, you know, from your own, you know, ideas, good economic policy should be bipartisan.
Well, it will be. But this is the battleground of the politics. I mean, it was just the same way it was in the late 70s. I mean, you looked at Prop 13, you looked at Prop 2.5 in Massachusetts, you looked at what happened in Delaware with Pete DuPont, what happened in Puerto Rico with Carlos Romero Barceló, Guam in the Northern Mariana. All of these were the battlegrounds. We're having those same battlegrounds today. And you know, people are trying different models. And politics flows up, not down. And the successes or the failures, I mean, I think Quinn's favorable ratings are probably 25% in Illinois. I mean, Mark Dayton, duh, I mean, what a loser. I mean, Jerry Brown, you know, California's going to have a huge problem. And we'll see all of these things unveil and unfold.
What do you say to the people who are touting Jerry Brown as a hero and you know, labeling the new revenues in California based on our tax increases last year, Prop 30, as kind of California's comeback?
Well, maybe, you know, let's see. I don't think it is at all. I think the reason their revenues are higher is because he made the tax retroactive a year. He made the capital gains tax increase retroactive 5 years. You know, how can you leave if they tax you on last year's income? I mean, I think that's why it's all happening. But we'll see what happens. We've been seeing what's happened in the last decade. I mean, California's had this huge out-migration of high-income people and a huge in-migration of low-income people. Texas has had a huge in-migration of high-income people. These are all the IRS data. We've got all those numbers. Texas was what, the 4th fastest growing state in the nation? California was the 22nd. California's still a great state, don't get me wrong, but it's dropping like a stone. And if in the next decade it comes out the way I think it will, California will become, you know, will become New Jersey. It'll become West Virginia. It'll become Michigan. It'll become Ohio. If that's what you want for your state, vote for them. But, you know, Michigan, I mean, New Jersey in 1965, now let me just try you in this, had neither an income tax nor a sales tax. Neither one, no. 1965, wasn't that long ago, 47 years ago, 48 years ago. Neither an income tax nor a sales tax. They were one of the fastest growing states in the nation. They had people moving in from everywhere in droves, and they had a balanced budget. 3 years ago, when John Corzine was governor, they had the highest property taxes, highest sales taxes, highest income taxes, almost the highest in all those. They're one of the slowest growing states in the nation. People were leaving in droves and they had huge budget deficits. How do they do that? You cannot tax a state into prosperity, rule number one. You cannot balance a budget on the backs of the unemployed. Have you seen the unemployment rate in California versus Texas?
Yeah.
Have you seen the participation rates in the labor force?
I have not seen that.
Yikes! Well, of course, it's much lower in California than it is in Texas. And on and on and on. We'll see how that story unfolds, but my best guess is don't go long California and don't short Texas.